Good evening, Sierra Cast TV, family and friends. Welcome to another broadcast. I have with me Brother Kory Hunter, who has been influential in presenting the John Maxwell theory in leadership and development for youth. We are going to present some of that information that we've been using for Dawatu Islamia's youth forums that we host on a monthly basis on Sunday mornings for the youth within our community. Please give us this chance to develop some skills for yourself that you can even share with your youth that are amongst your community, that are in your homes, or that are just relatives. So please give a warm welcome to Brother Kory Hunter. He's going to talk a little bit about himself, and then we're going to go into interview style discussion where we'll be discussing some of the different theories in leadership and personal development. Please welcome Brother Kory Hunter.
Thank you, Sister Lima. So just a little bit about me. I'm an executive director with the John Maxwell team. I also work as a professor in a local university here. I've been teaching for 7 years. Prior to that, I worked for 15 years in financial services. And now as a PhD student, specializing in transformational leadership, I am all things leadership. I think that one of the things that we can empower our young people with is to equip them to lead. And so I think that it's an important topic and an important skill that we can help our young people to develop. When we talk about, or when we think about leadership, most people think that leadership is about a position or a title. And so they don't see the opportunity or the necessity to actually develop leadership skills. So I'm really excited to be talking tonight about our youth leadership development program that we've been conducting on a monthly basis, and how we can continue to add value to young people.
Wonderful, Mr. Hunter. All right. So one of the questions that we want people to understand is, what is the correlation to the subjects that we are bringing up on a monthly basis, such as self-worth, attitude? What is the correlation with religion? If we look at our prophet, peace be upon him, Prophet Muhammad, he had character that we've probably never seen or heard of. So what is the correlation as we're teaching the youth to learn this about themselves? What is the correlation really? We don't really want to get too much into religion, but we want people to understand the importance of these different topics.
That's a great question, Sister Lima. So if I can, I just want to tell a short story about how I kind of became obsessed with this idea of leadership, and why I think it's so important, particularly as it relates to helping develop our young people to lead. So in 2014, I had a teaching post assigned to a university teaching in Saudi Arabia. And from 2014 to 2017, I held that post in Saudi Arabia. After the second year of going back, so that was around 2016, I started to look around the country of Saudi Arabia. Now, most people know Saudi Arabia from making Hajj or Umrah. And they usually come in, they stay in the 5-star hotel, they make their Umrah, they make their Hajj, and then they leave. But they don't actually have an opportunity, as I was afforded, to actually live with Saudis and live within the society, and to see how the society is function under Islamic law. And so one of the things that I realized when I was there, as I looked around the society in many different functions within the community. So if you look at the education, if you look at business, if you look at healthcare, if you look at the NGOs, one of the things that I noticed there, which to me was really like eerie, was that there was a lot of failing institutions that depend on the government for assistance. So the government is kind of sponsoring everything, but there's a lot of failure on a lot of different institutional levels, be it in education or healthcare or or throughout the country itself. And so when I looked, I said, how can these institutions be failing, so to speak? Take education, for example, where you see the quality of students that are being produced, and the quality of education that's being received it's quite low from my own experience in being there teaching. So I realized that something was missing. And for me, someone who converted to Islam when I was 16 years old and had always dreamed about working and living in Saudi Arabia, having the opportunity to travel to Medina on the weekends, and then every so often going for Umrah whenever I wanted to. That was, to me, it was a blessing that I had hoped for and lived for and wanted to experience it. So I finally had the opportunity to do that. But another thing that opened my eyes was how there were so many of these institutions that were failing. And so I couldn't understand what was actually wrong and what was going on until I picked up a book by John Maxwell. And John's number one leadership expert in the world. He's written many books, but his most famous book is The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And so I read this book, and in the book, I read a quote where John says that everything rises and falls on leadership. And I mean, I was on my way from America, traveling back to Saudi Arabia at the end of the summer to start the new semester. And I had picked this book up from the airport, from the bookstore in the airport. And so I'm reading this book on the way back over on the flight, and that line stood out to me. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And then he went on to explain how people ask him, well, what do you mean by that statement, John, that everything rises and falls on leadership? Well, everything rises and falls on leadership. So as I began to apply and look through that premise that everything rises and falls on leadership, and I started looking at all the different institutions within Saudi Arabia, I started to recognize that there was a leadership problem, right? That there was the ability to lead from the top from the top of organizations to the bottom. Leadership was something that was lacking. And so I just became really, really, I guess you could say, somewhat obsessed with leadership and leadership development, and then understanding what a person who is highly developed and highly effective in their leadership, what that can actually do for a society. From a religious standpoint, when I first started studying it, I thought, well, let's see, who do I know that is probably the greatest leader that has ever walked the face of the earth, right? And then the first person that comes to mind, Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He was, if you look at the way he led his family, if you look at the way he led the community, if you look at the way he led military expeditions, if you look at the way he led the economy, the political economy, on every aspect of leadership, the Prophet ﷺ was at the highest caliber of leadership. And so then I started to reflect on some of the prophets in the Quran, some of the prophets like Nuh, and some of the prophets like Musa alayhi salam, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he commanded Musa to idhhab ila fir'aun innahu tagha, so he told him, go to Fir'aun, he's transgressed all bounds. And this idea of Musa having the courage. Now we know that courage as a leader is one thing that's very, very, very important, but that Musa had this courage to be able to go to Fir'aun, who had all the power. And so as I reflected on many, many, many of the prophets, I thought about Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, and when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him to build the Baytullah there in Saudi Arabia, and he just built it. He listened to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He started to build it. And many, many, many other examples of all this Anbiya in the Quran and how they had exemplified the highest level of leadership. But then when you look to those same skills within the society, even from the classroom where I was teaching, you find that the people are not living those principles that we've inherited from the Prophet. In particular, when I'm talking about leadership specifically, I'm referring to what I call values-based leadership. And values-based leadership aligns for us from a religious standpoint, from the Islamic tradition, under tarbiyah wa tafsir, right? Where we understand that our character and our development within our character is one of the most important things. As we know that our mother Aisha radiallahu anha, when she was asked about the character of the Prophet, she answered by saying that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's character was the Quran. And so when I looked across that society, one of the things that I saw missing were the character of people, the values of people. They were no longer aligned to those values that the Prophet ﷺ taught us. They were no longer aligned to to the principles that the Prophet ﷺ taught us around character. And so I became really passionate about teaching these values of values-based leadership.
Awesome. And we see that today as it relates to our leaders, whether they're within our community or our presidency. We're looking for leaders that definitely have great character. They have courage to do what's right. As we're looking at all of the social issues today, or even just the pandemic. The pandemic, we have so many people that have courage to go out there to help others selflessly, or whether it's an actual career choice. We have people that are evaluating right now their current self-worth. What is my value that I'm going out there every day risking my life to help these people? You're being selfless. The value of their choice to do that. It's so important right now to know what it means to be a leader and to be transformational, because we're looking at these people today and they're absolutely being transformational because they are setting a tone that it's not just about me, but it's about the people around me. I'm taking care of them, I'm helping them, or people wearing their masks, the courage to stand up and do what's right. So we look at all these different norms within our society right now, and you're like, wow, a program like this is very valuable to teach my children or my children's friends, right? So one of the other questions I have is, how impactful has this method been within the different areas or locations you've been able to work in, or to be able to be a part of the program?
That's a great question. So John Maxwell, he has the John Maxwell Leadership Foundation. And one of the things that the John Maxwell Leadership Foundation is committed to is making a difference in the world and adding value to people all over the world. So one thing that I've had the opportunity to do is to travel with John. There are several countries where there have been a opportunity for John to come in with several coaches, about 150 to 200 of his coaches. And what we do is when we go into countries, we work with the country and we start to have them go through what we call roundtable methodology. And through the roundtable methodology, people can then begin to transform their lives. We always say the transformation begins with me. And some of the countries that we've had the opportunity to work with and transform are Costa Rica, Guatemala, Colombia. Last year, I had an opportunity to travel with John to Paraguay. And then this year coming up, hopefully, if the pandemic slows down, we are scheduled to go into another country. And one of the things that we do when we go into the country is we look at the 7 streams of influence within the country, whether it be education, healthcare, non-for-profit, business, banking. We go into all of these industries and we basically go through with them how to conduct a roundtable. One of the things that I was particularly excited about when I traveled to Paraguay is that I had the opportunity to go into schools. Now, when I was there, I had the opportunity to choose between going into businesses because of my background in working in corporate America, or to go into local schools. And since I'm a professor here, I said, I got to go into schools, right? Any chance I have an opportunity to empower and to speak into the lives of young people, a word of encouragement, I'm the first one to sign up. So in about 4 days or so, I mean, I'm talking about, I was in so many classrooms. Some of the classrooms had 75 students, 100 students. They were all packed in. And I just really had a great time going around and teaching them how to go through the roundtable, and how the important thing about the roundtable for young people is one of the things that we teach them is we teach them how to lead. Okay, they don't need me to stand in front of the classroom and kind of talk at them. The roundtable methodology allows for young people themselves to facilitate it. So one of the things that I had the opportunity to do, and we've actually been able to use this in Dawat Islamiyah when we met before the pandemic in person, is you take groups of young people, you put them into groups of 4 or 5, so they're small groups, and then you show them how to facilitate the round table amongst themselves. And what that does is it actually allows them, each one of them, to have the opportunity to actually lead, right? So leadership is not something that develops in a day, but leadership develops daily. And so when those young people, when we train them on the curriculum, and the curriculum has 16 lessons, and we show them how to do one of the lessons, after that, they are more than equipped to be able to go through those roundtables and to facilitate for themselves, with me just there to lend support in case they get off track. But it's so great to see the young people themselves facilitating, right? For the older people like me to get out of the way and to pass it on to them, to give them the opportunity to lead, to give them to have the opportunity to discuss some of the things that we discuss, like the value of choice and the value of attitude and the value of character, the value of self-worth, the value of courage, and let young people have that conversation. And furthermore, let young people lead the conversation. Because for me and for you, you and I might know what courage is, but for them, it might be something completely different. So allowing them to lead themselves in that conversation is something that is absolutely fascinating, and it plants the seeds of transformation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brother Hunter. So one of the biggest things that you just said was leadership develops daily. That right there hits home, because we are in situations daily, on a day-to-day basis, where we have to question the value of our choices. We have to question our self-worth, our attitude within those conflicting situations or simple conversations, our commitment to what it is that we've committed to, whether it's our family, our friends, our jobs, or whether it's just ourselves, personal selves. And then we look at our self-worth, and then the courage to actually stand up for your self-worth or the value of yourself. So that is so important for people to understand that leadership, it develops daily. Every minute, every second is developing. Whether it's how you're communicating with your children, I can raise my hand. Sometimes you have a rough day, and it might not be as pleasant as you wanted, but it's the moment where you step back and you say, yes, they're worth more than the way I just spoke to them. Right? It's the way that we question ourselves with our employees or with just our colleagues, okay, or our spouses, the commitment we make to each other. How are we upholding those commitments? How are we upholding those values of ourselves? So leadership is daily, and everybody's a leader. It just depends on how you want to lead. Okay. My next question for you, Brother Hunter, self-worth and self-value. What is the difference or the meaning within the Maxwell theory, or just overall from your experience? Is there a difference?
So I'm going to first start with self-worth. And self-worth, we say that self-worth is a price tag issue, right? So when it comes to self-worth, we equate it to a price tag issue, meaning the world will never pay you more than the price tag you put on yourself, right? So we are responsible in terms of self-worth. We're responsible for putting our own price tag on ourselves, okay? So whatever price I put on myself, the world is going to pay me that, right? And so when it comes to self-worth, the way that we increase our self-worth is by increasing our self-value, right? And self-value starts with self-love. When it comes to self-love, you can't give what you don't have, right? And in order for you to value yourself, you have to first love yourself. So a lot of times we're not kind to ourselves. And so until we start to appreciate and understand the importance of self-care and taking care of ourselves and our own wellness, then we can come to understand that it's important that we value ourselves. Because again, when it comes to an issue of value, we always want to be in a position where we are adding value to other people, right? We always want to be in a position where we're trying to add value to other people so that we can live a life of significance, whereas most people are chasing success and they want to live a life of success. It's more important to live a life of significance, right? Success is what happens to you, and significance is what happens through you. So for us to add value to other people and to live a life of significance, we have to first add value to ourselves. And unless we have self-love, we will not add value to ourselves. And therefore, we can't add value to other people because we can't give what we don't have. So self-value is something that we put on ourselves, and self-worth is a price tag we put, and we go out into the world, and the world will always pay us the price tag that we put on ourselves. So we need to make sure that our self-worth, that we're putting a high price tag.
Wow. The impact of what you've just discussed, Brother Hunter. Wow. Right? Because we look at it every day, you're like, oh, I care about myself. I have self-worth, or I have my self-wellness all together. But if you don't have it, you can't give it, right? So to live that life of significance where you can exhibit the value through people or through yourself to people, it's so important, right? So we are now in a society where some people aren't radiating their self-value, right? In order to live that life of significance where other people now can benefit, where you're going out and giving back to your community, right? That's an example of self-value, living a life of significance. When you go back to your community and offer a hand to those that need it. This is charity. So of course we care about our community. So just looking at that is so impactful. Yes, love yourself. That's self-care. You have to be able to love yourself in order to bring the people that will love you in the manner in which you need to be loved. With that said, thank you, Brother Hunter. That was wow. I was like, wait a minute. Whoop. What? The life of significance? Okay. All right. I love it. I absolutely love it. My other question to you, Brother Hunter, is values of choice, character, attitude, commitment, self-worth, initiative. If we're looking at today, our society, with everything going on, do you see these in play? Do you see these different attributes of a person's personal development today? Do you see that in your lectures or with your students? Do you see that within the community right now that we're working with to help develop leaders that will come back and help their community?
Oh, that's an excellent question. What I will say is probably one of the greatest challenges globally. One of the greatest global challenges is getting people to be back in alignment with the values, right? Earlier, one of the things that I mentioned are that when we talk about values-based leadership and why using a roundtable methodology are important to helping people realign themselves, is the fact that there's so many people in so many societies that are not living in alignment with the values. So I'm going to start with our own society, right? Because we first have to look at ourselves and look at our own, we got to take care of our own backyard first. So if you look at the society as a whole and what we value here, right? And here in the cultural value that we have here in the West is one of ego, is one of self-centeredness. It's one of individualism. It's one of survival of the fittest, right? It's one of dog eat dog, right? It's one of zero sum, right? Where I win and everyone else loses, right? And so these are values that our society has have become embedded with that within our society as a result of living in a capitalistic society, right? I want to talk a little bit about how the society, the structure that we use here is capitalism, and I think that what we're seeing is capitalism run amok. And when you talk to economists and they look at capitalism, they say that when Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, the seminal work on capitalism and the invisible hand theory, before that, he wrote another book that was called Of Moral Sentiment. And one of the things that he wrote in that was when you have capitalism unfettered, then people go away from having or feeling a sense of moral obligation for one another and a sense of valuing each other from a community standpoint, right? Then what ends up happening is those values, you don't see them in society. So I'll give you an example of that. If you go to New York and you go to the subway, you'll find a lot of homeless people sleeping in the subway. They'll be there with a cup asking for change. Someone will come out of a Starbucks where they just paid $5 American for a cup of coffee, walk past the person asking for change without having any value or they'll see that person as having no worth. When our own self-value is low, when our own self-worth is low, then we project that out to the rest of the world and we don't see the value of anyone else and we don't see the worth of anyone else. So many people will walk right over that or step right over the homeless person after buying a $5 cup of coffee at Starbucks and won't even think twice to giving the person there who is, we would say down and out, right, a quarter from their wallet, because so many parts of society are no longer in alignment with the values of loving, of having this love, right? If I can go back to a statement of the Prophet ﷺ as it relates to these values, and we talk about self-worth, and we go back to commitment, a lot of it centers around, I'm going to go back to this idea of love and having a love for one another, right? So the Prophet ﷺ said that لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لنفسه ماذا يحب لأخيه. None of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. Again, this is a value. This is a values issue. So when it as it relates to how it shows up in the society, when people are not aligned with the values, it's almost like we're living the wild, wild west, where every man for himself, for the most part, and at a time where we need to be united, where we need to have a sense of community, where we need to have a sense of family structure, where we need to have a sense of being one together around a common purpose, around shared goals and values, right? In order to become a more perfect union or to become a more perfect country. So each one of us, we have a role to play. And if we work on developing ourselves and living these values in our life, one thing that you mentioned early was that that everyone's a leader. And I wrote that down. I wrote, everyone is a leader. Some people might think, well, no, I'm not a leader. I don't have a position or a title or a parking space in the front of the office with my name on it, right? Having a position or a title doesn't make you a leader, right? Having a parking space with your name on it doesn't make you a leader, right? So what makes you a leader is when you stand up for what is right, when you have the courage to act, when you see an injustice, right? So for example, if you see people that are out protesting, they're demonstrating leadership. They're demonstrating the ability to stand up. But when you look at so many other ills within a society, we don't see leadership in many institutions. If you think about what's sparked the whole Black Lives Matter, most of it comes from this idea of self-worth and self-value. When one group of people have a low self-value or self-worth for another group of people, then they violate the rights of that group of people. And what is most alarming as it relates to leadership is they say that one bad apple don't spoil all the rest of the apples. But if there's a group of us and one of us does something to violate the rights of another person, right? In some cases where people are in positions of influence and power through law enforcement, and they might use that to claim to be enforcing the law, while other law enforcement officers are looking on as this person is maybe doing something that's wrong. That's a leadership issue, right? So when we're not in alignment with the values, when we're not developing leadership abilities, then the society just kind of starts to you start to see so many instances of people not living in alignment with the values, and therefore not leading not leading a life that they should be leading.
Thank you so much, Brother Hunter. So one of your main points, not living the life that you're meant to live, or the life that you should be living. A lot of us perhaps may feel that way just because of perhaps our certain values are not aligned to our environment or to what we're doing. So at that point, you need to be brave and make that change to live the life of value that you want to live, right? We have our attitudes are affected on a day-to-day basis because we may not be living. When your values are not aligned, your environment kind of creates that conflict for you to find a way to align your values for what you are worth. Okay. Now, leadership is something simple as somebody drops a tissue on the floor, you pick it up and put it in the trash can. Leadership is that simple. Okay. So I work with students, I work with adults, I work with people with developmental disabilities. It doesn't matter who you are, but if you can stand up and be brave, as Brother Hunter has just described to us, what it means to stand up and do what someone else will not do, will not take that leadership step. Perhaps we may change our current climate in our society, right? Perhaps we might change the way our society is thinking or the way things are happening amongst our community. For someone to step up and be brave, or someone to step up and have that courage, okay? Overcoming your fear, that is courage, okay? Not succumbing to the negativity, but being optimistic and saying, yes, I'm going to do it, right? That means you are courageous. Now, one of my other questions here as we're wrapping up, Brother Hunter, within all of these topics, or within the topics that we're going to continue to discuss with the youths, with the adults within our community, in regards to leadership development, what should they focus on? What should be their focus with each topic, or with the topics that we've discussed so far? What should be their focus in them harnessing their own leadership? What should be their focus?
Oh, that's a great question. That is really, really, really good question. So what I would say is one of the most important things that young people can do young adults, even we have some adults that participate, is they can engage in the process, right? The goal and the purpose of the roundtables is for young people to engage in the process of transformation. So, what do I mean by that? When we are engaged in the roundtables with young people, in order for them to actually start to experience the transformation that in order for them to begin to experience the transformation that is required, that's required of young people, they need to be willing to actually engage in it. So the roundtables are not something where we just talk about them and they're just content and we discuss them and then everyone goes away. Each roundtable is built on one of the foundational values of leadership. So, for example, we talk about the value of courage or the value of responsibility, the value of forgiveness, the value of character, the value of relationship. And it's funny because as I was going through this, I went back and I looked in Imam Bukhari's book on Adab al-Mufrad, where he's talking about character, and some of the same topics are listed in his book, right? Particularly the value of responsibility. So you'll find in some of in some of the scholarship of Islam, scholars are writing about the same thing that we're talking about, characters and morals and values. The round table is a way that allows for individuals to actually come to the round table and not only discuss the values, but identify the characteristics, look at what the benefits are of living into that value. And then it also provides you with steps that you can take to actually develop the value. So once you come to the awareness that here are the characteristics of the value of, say, responsibility, and then you come into the awareness that you don't have the characteristics or you're not living into the value, then there are steps you can take to actually develop. And that's where leadership develops daily. So you can look at those steps on how you can develop. And then it's followed by each one of the roundtables is followed by the last thing and the most important thing are the action steps. What are the action steps that you're going to take to grow into that value? And then each person within the roundtable has to make a commitment to the rest of the group that they're going to take an action around whatever value is being discussed. And then when we come back to the roundtables the next time, the person has an opportunity to discuss the progress that they've made on that particular value. So transformation is an ongoing process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a lifelong journey of self-development and trying to live in accordance with those values.
Thank you, Brother Hunter. That was my last question. It has been a wonderful evening. And one of my favorite quotes from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is love for yourself what you love for your brother, right? That is the key to having a community that is of understanding, that has great attitude, that has self-worth for its people or within its circle, within that circle of people, there's self-value, okay? Because I can't love for myself and then when I see my brother, I don't want that for them. No. It's important. Brother meaning my fellow human being. I cannot love for myself and then look at my fellow female human being and not love that for her, right? Then there becomes an imbalance in the community. So love for yourself what you would love for your own fellow human being. Because we are all of one kind. We are all humans. And we all feel pain and sorrow, etc., etc. But the point is for us to be of understanding for each other, right? for us to know each other's self-value, or should I say self-worth. Everyone has worth. Okay? Let's be understanding that leadership, everyone has it. Whether you're transformational, whether you're a follower kind of a leader, whether you're a sit back kind of a leader. Of course, there are more complex concepts, terms for these, but for you to understand, you can be an easygoing leader, laid back, hands off, or you can be a micromanaging kind of leader. So be a leader that's going to be transformational though, right? The whole purpose of this is to help everyone recognize their attributes and help them grow in a way that will be transformational for your community. That will be something you can reach back and help someone that is in need or that needs guidance. I thank everyone for listening. Look forward to our Dawatu Islamia presentations. We thank Sierra Cast TV for always being welcoming and helpful in getting the message out in regards to any topic. Brother Kory, would you like to say anything?
My parting words would be this. That leadership, again, is influence, is nothing more and it's nothing less. And that, as Sister Lima said, we are all leaders. And even if we don't have any followers, the hardest person to lead is ourselves. So we're all leaders. And if you don't have anyone to follow, then lead yourself and lead yourself well.
Thank you. Everyone, be a great leader to yourself. Then, of course, it'll trickle down to your family and friends, and then your community. Have a blessed evening. Everyone, please refrain from gathering tomorrow or throughout the holiday season. It's imperative for us to know our self-worth, and that is to keep everyone safe by distancing and not gathering in large crowds. Please wear masks, and of course, wash your hands. Thank you so much. My name is Wilhemina Allen. I've had the special guest, Mr. Kory Hunter, with me this evening. We thank Sierra Cast TV for always being willing to broadcast our important messages to the community. Please, any questions, reach out to Sierra Cast TV, and then hopefully we can do a follow-up. Thank you and have a wonderful holiday. All right, Brother Kory, you did it!